But also, like, the thing that drew me to yoga, not just my own experience and searching for help, but I'm fascinated by the fact that it's a science for life. It's not just about getting more bendy and throwing some shapes. Yoga is all about human potential and self-realization, which is the key aspect of it, more so than just, doing a few downward dogs and getting into child's pose twice a week. And that is such a strong thing. It is a science. It is science from the East, from another time, but it's no less important than the stuff that's in the literature and in Western scientific study or academies. It's a fascinating thing when you start to dive into it, for sure.
I think it is, but and again, the West manifestation of yoga is, as you say, do a few downward dogs and you'll be fine. But the whole thing is, it's about a way of being. It's an energy, all about energy flow, and understanding that Sadhguru talks about the mind, the body, energy, and joy, which are separate. So if you really want joy, you're going to that highest level of stripping away any level of identity, the duality, the polarities of man, woman, of sun, moon, and just understanding we're all part of that intrinsic process together rather than the separation, the duality, the polarity. You've got to win or lose, as you talked about before.
Yeah.
Win and learn. You win and learn at the end of the day. So welcome aboard, everybody. I've got my great mate, Graham, here. Look at that smile. He's got such beautiful, warm energy. He is a yoga man a little bit myself. In fact, has been a yoga instructor in his previous life. Graham's main role now is that he's one of the senior leaders of the operations team in a business jet environment. And we used to work together, and we have developed a wonderful friendship, just discussing everything that's healthy, mind, body, heart and soul, holistic. And Graham is one of these wonderful individuals. I wouldn't say man versus woman, but an individual who understands the delicate balance of feminine and masculine qualities. And I think we are going to have such an amazing conversation on that, how it supports our industry and how we can metaphor that to everybody's everyday lives, including our own, of course. So welcome, Graham. Lovely to have you here.
Thanks, mate. Good to be here. Thanks for inviting me on.
Yeah, good news. So let's give us a little lowdown, couple of minute lowdown of your career and where you are now, and then we can launch into our great conversations.
Yeah, sure. So I currently work for a BizJet operator as a senior operations controller. I've been in the industry for about 24 years now, doing similar roles. Started off in the airline world for Sabre XL, for those that are around can remember that. Sabre used to fly 727s and I think some dodgy old 73s. That morphed into XL Airways. I was there for 9 years. And then moved from the airline world into outsourced ops, working within a brokerage at Air Partner, and then took the jump into business aviation at ExecuJet that was based at Cambridge, and then where I am now. So, yeah, pretty long time when I think about it in the world of aviation. Different guys is doing different things, meeting some pretty fantastic people. And then the whole yoga thing,
having the challenges.
Yeah.
The challenges of challenging people too.
Lots of similarities, a number of differences. And then the whole yoga thing is part of my personal story, which hopefully we'll also touch on today, because there's just so many actionable tools that I've learned that can help, particularly around the mental health conversation.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think that's what a great segue into why we're here. It's really about developing health. Central to that is psychological health, mental health, mindset, etc. We've talked a lot about the mindset, resilience and well-being as the core elements to that. And what I really admire about you is your willingness to talk about your own struggles. And we're all in these leadership positions. Everybody's a leader, regardless of what stamp we have in terms of the company structure.
True.
We're all leaders, and I think the first thing I think about in terms of leadership is, and the clue is in the first letter of lead, is to listen to what other people say, but also to listen to ourselves and not try and run away from our mental health issues. And we know, as we know, mental health is a big topic at the moment, particularly in our business. We talked about the fact that we think it's going to become much more of a mandatory thing within our business. We work intrinsically together. We rely on each other to get this job done, this mission to get an aeroplane from A to B as safely and efficiently and as enjoyably and comfortably as possible. And we cannot achieve that without working together, you and the operations team, us as the pilot, and everybody else, all the other thousands of people that are involved. And I think that the whole thing is that we have to listen to each other. But if we're going to listen well to other people, we have to listen to ourselves, which I think you've demonstrated. So tell us the struggles that you've had. I think that's a great starting point.
Thanks, mate. That was eloquently put. I couldn't agree more. Yeah, and it hasn't always been that way. About being comfortable speaking about my experience, because there's a lot of shame that people can experience around mental health issues. And I've certainly experienced that myself, feeling that you're broken in some way, beating yourself up, you try and rationalize it. So all these things can keep you quiet, and maybe not even from talking out to others or speaking about it to others, but seeking help, which is a core thing, which I think we'll touch on. So my issue, in particular, was really crippling anxiety, social anxiety. And it started from about 16 onwards. And then all the way through until probably, what am I now? Probably about mid-30s, where I found actionable tools that helped me, discovered yoga. But right up until that point, so a huge section of my life, constant state, not constant, but in the work environment, certainly, hyper vigilant, hyper aware, just in my fight or flight mode all the time throughout all of my shifts. And it kind of wears you down. And then it culminated where I was at work one day, and this was after about 15, I suppose. Yeah. 15-ish years of suffering, maybe 20 years of suffering. And I had a bit of a breakdown, a bit of a crash, for want of a better word. And the world closed in, and I just had to leave. I had to walk out the office. And I think amongst other things, just being in that constant state, your body flowing that speedy flow of cortisol, stress hormones around your body for so long, adrenaline, and it's not healthy to be, like in my job, our shifts are 12 and a half hours long. So to be like that and experience that for all of that time, for such a long period of time, like the body keeps the score, right? It's if you don't take action, your body is going to take action at some stage. So, it culminated in that happening to me. And then that was really the start of my journey in trying to, seek answers, find tools that can really help me. Usual process, going down to the doctors, being signed off work, prescription meds. And then one day, I was actually working, ExecuJet at the time. I just thought, I'm not taking these things anymore. There's something else. There was something intuitive inside of me that was like, there's a better way to approach this. And I suppose I should caveat that, prescription drugs can really help people, all sorts of conditions. So, but for me, I felt I need to find another way here, because they were having I'm a relatively sporty guy. They were having an impact on, my breathing and stuff. And I'd always felt a calling to just explore yoga. And then I went to a couple of classes, and within a week of kind of intensely going every day, I was hooked, and realized that this ancient knowledge that is there for all to experience was the thing that was going to help me. Because my anxiety could be utterly crippling when your nervous system is behaving in such a way, it just dominates your being. And I can't continue like this. There must be things I can do, and there are, which is one of the reasons why I was very happy to accept your invitation to come on today, because the main driver for this actually is, and we've spoken about this many times, is that I wish I knew 20 years ago what I know now, and had the tools that I have now 20 years ago, because it would have been a very different life experience for me. I would have got on top of this way quicker. And I see other guys in our industry, people I know, that are in similar, maybe not as extreme, but they're in similar positions with the things that they're experiencing and that some people have shared. And it's always, you think, oh my God, I never realized that he or she was suffering or had an issue with this. And it's wanting to share the information, hopefully, that has helped me. So even if people take one thing away from this conversation, it might change the trajectory of their suffering and bring it to an end sooner rather than later than it was for me. So in a nutshell, really, that's it. That's what I've experienced. And the key thing is to highlight what worked for me, so others can take whatever serves them and just discard the rest.
I think that therein lays the story. Is at the end of the day, we need to learn well from our own experiences of suffering, which is an inevitable part of life, and be geared towards finding good, effective, long-term, lasting tools, and then tell the story in order to support other people. I think is the basic tenets of humanity, as we're actually here together, and that is that whole idea about us needing each other in the metaphor of flying aeroplanes and creating that mission success, and life is a mission. We cannot do that without each other. And if we hide away and we fall subject to our self-consciousness, which I think is what what you're alluding to, that crippling social anxiety, and it's self-consciousness that is brought in by massive floods of neurochemicals, hormones as a teenager, of which I don't think I've yet to have a conversation with anybody that tells me that the kids are being taught or understood, or having classes at school understanding exactly what's going on physiologically in the body. You mentioned the whole idea about the sympathetic system, the autonomic nervous system, with the parasympathetic and the sympathetic side. And I think that's a really good starting point, because I think when we understand the difference, the physical reactions that happen with stress, chronic stress and acute stress being the immediate fight and fly situation. I'm about to be eaten by the lion, the saber-toothed tiger, or whatever.
Yeah.
And the chronic stress of all those very useful chemicals in the short term, firing us up, the adrenaline, the cortisols and the noradrenalines, etc. Once they last, as you say, it's the body plays back in that. So, yeah, I mean, I think this is a good point. How do we recognize the initial symptoms, and then what do we do? So what do you do now to help you overcome the cortisol flood that goes on for too long? Because it effectively shuts down the immune system, and which is fine in the short term to get away from the lion or the immediate stress, but in the long term, it's massively damaging. So how do you get over that, apart from the yoga and the exercise?
I think that is the key, almost the key takeaway, really. And the one piece of information, I'm not here to give advice. I'm not a trained medical doctor, but the bit of advice I would give, if you are an anxiety or really feel stress sufferer, then go and research the autonomic nervous system, the sympathetic, parasympathetic, fight or flight, rest and digest. That was an absolute eureka moment for me. The light went on. I could relate to what's then going on in my body, understand it, and critically, how do I come out of it? So I think the symptoms, if you like, for want of a better word. So I found myself a lot in the sympathetic nervous system. So the fight or flight response. So like you say, in the olden day, we'd be worried about fending off tigers or other tribes or whatever. Now it can be the many plates that you've got spinning as an ops guy or a pilot, your workload in the cockpit, looking to make it relevant. Oh, I'm looking at this AirOps dispatch. All of a sudden, someone's got a CFMU slot. I need to reroute that. And by the way, they want to go in 15 minutes. You've got a team underneath you that have got questions. All these things that are a draw on your time when you're trying to concentrate yourself, and you have to manage it You know, keep those plates spinning all the time, prioritize, reprioritize. I am getting to answer to your question. I'm getting to the point.
No, it's brilliant. It's brilliant. Honestly,
it's really just to make it relevant to the aviation audience. And that people will experience or deal with those kind of pressure environments differently. That's why like the perceived pressure bubble is an interesting concept. What you experience may not be my experience. What triggers you may not cause me an issue. But the fact is we will have our own issues. So when I find myself in those states now, understanding that my increased heart rate or my shortness of breath, which is linked to your sympathetic nervous system, you know, and when you're in fight or flight, you're trying to get breath in really, really quickly. You start to get brain fog. The blood goes to your limbs so you can either run or fight. You know, it has a very, very real effect on you. And it doesn't need to be, I don't know, someone attacking you in the street. It can be those pressured environments or situations we find within our work. Like we've got the inbox is filling up. Who do we help first? The phone is going. I've got 3 crews that all need my time. I've only got 3 guys to divvy up the work. Who goes first? And you can feel it in your body. You can notice your breathing change. You can notice the tension. The brain, you know, if you've been at it all day, it's 8 hours into your shift, you'll probably notice your cognitive decline. You know, so these are the things I notice. And then to help me, when I'm not at work, exercise is central to me, that getting the basics right. So exercise, nutrition, hydration and sleep. The latter can be tricky for you and me. You know, I work night shifts, you guys throughout the night. So it's not ideal. And I'm not sure you can actually mitigate a lack of sleep, but you can certainly, you can't make up for lack of sleep, but you could try to mitigate it, in your preparation or how you deal with the stress. So yoga is key, physically moving my body. But breath work, I think if that's the other bit of advice, learn about the autonomic nervous system, learn about breath work and how your breathing can bring you out of one state into another. It's so simple, you know, short, sharp breathing, fight or flight, long exhales is linked to your parasympathetic nervous system. And within a very short space of time, surprisingly short space of time, you can bring your body out of one into the other. That's speaking generally. Obviously, there's different situations. You can be more stressed. Your body can be under stress, mind under stress, serious stress, and just doing a few breaths isn't going to cut it. But in general terms, that's the theory. And there's all sorts of practices that you can do out there. I like having cold showers or cold water therapy or open water swimming that my girlfriend introduced me to, funnily enough. There are tools that you can regulate your nervous system. There are things that you can do so your response to stress is better. You know, it's not so short, sharp, overwhelming. I realized, I suppose, just speak from the first person, I realized that these practices with consistent practice, what is important to say is some of this stuff does take a bit of discipline. You have to devote the time to doing it. Going to one yoga class a week or going for one run a week is probably going to make you feel great. And it will for a short period of time, but long-term change, you have to be consistent. So it needs a bit of discipline. So that's the key thing for me that I do. My own personal practice, I haven't taught for a while, but my own personal practice in yoga really, really helps me. One lesson I did learn is that when I'm stressed, physical movement first, followed by breath work. So I noticed that, you know, sat at a desk, starting to feel stress, I might get fidgety. It might start tapping my feet. The physical movement, I think, is your body trying to deal with the cortisol stress hormone that's going around. So, get up, go for a walk. I try and start from a work context. I try and start my shifts. I'll get early and I'll do 10, 15 minutes of meditation or breathing before handover. And then throughout the day, I would get up and just go for walks, get some fresh air, get some natural light. And then really everything else is preparatory. It's stuff that I do in my life outside of work. And we were talking about a little while ago, just before I pause, about the like the 4 happy hormones. So dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and the endorphins. And when I was looking through, just reviewing my notes, there's a couple of things that keep coming up in terms of being deficient in some of those happy hormones. And the usual suspects: chronic stress, fear, loneliness, detachment, lack of sunlight, lack of physical activity, poor nutrition. And that's just not even scratching the surface. But then also in the same vein, it's similar things that you can do to increase those happy hormones within your body. So moderate exercise, meditation, laughter, good diet, just reversing all the things that I mentioned previously. Really, really simple. Nice walks, go out, spend time in nature. You will have a direct impact on, in general terms, on bringing those hormones back into balance and really helping you. So learning about those, learning about the autonomic nervous system, and then my physical practice and stillness. Just try and stop the whirling of your mind. You can do that at work. You can take time to do that. You can just make time in your private life. Moments of stillness every day, whether it's 5 minutes, 20 minutes, or you do an hour, whatever it is. Get underneath the thinking and use your breath to do it. That's my advice. That's what's worked for me. We're not our thoughts. We're whatever is witnessing our thoughts. And that's been powerful for me in the past, just to realize that this risk manager that more often than not is there to help you. Sometimes it doesn't. And sometimes it's linked to things way back in your history, way back in your childhood that you needed help with then. You don't need help with that now. So these things can help you get underneath that whirling of the mind, bring some stillness. And then with the other small bits of knowledge, it can make such a colossal impact on your happiness outlook, and then just how you're interacting with the world and inner peace, for want of a cheesy phrase.
Yeah. I mean, that's beautifully put. Motivation to go to the next yard, motivation to embrace the wonderful opportunities and the adventure in life, and the motivation to deal with the inevitable thunderstorms, as I talk about, that hit us en route. But there's one word you used there, which I think is really relevant in this conversation, really relevant in the whole mental health statistic line that we've talked about. One, we've both done our research, but the NHS mentions that 1 in 4 adults suffer or are diagnosed with mental health problems. And that's, as far as I'm concerned, is 100%, because that's only the ones who actually have stood up and said, I'm really suffering here. And 3/4 of people are ashamed of that whole idea, particularly men, because, man up and drink your beer and go out and stop whinging. And there's a great conversation between Professor Scott Galloway and Stephen Bartlett, excuse me, on the Diary of a CEO. And they talked about the idea that I have a big thing about this, is that, the shame is being promoted to us in society at the moment. The shame of being a man, toxic masculinity, the patriarchy. We're not men. I'm talking about humanity. We're not good enough to be men. We've caused the problem. We've caused women to suffer and be the victims. I think at the end of the day, that narrative is creating victimhood everywhere, because women are being encouraged to think that they're the weaker lot at the hands of the powerful force, and men are being told that they're not good enough. But at the end of the day, it's promoting shame. And understandably, if we can do that, it gets people's attention, and then companies can monetize it with whatever product it is. Come and have a new haircut, or come and have a spray tan, or a new Ferrari, or there's always a solution on the external side of it. But I think if we recognize that shame is at the heart of it, and it is triggered, and that feeling can be triggered off by all the neurochemicals, the dose, as you mentioned, the dopamine, the oxytocin, the serotonin, the endorphins, as well as the devil's cocktails, as I came across recently on YouTube, of adrenaline and norepinephrine and cortisol. and those things, which are actually very beneficial in the short term. But I think the idea is that we represent both the masculine and the feminine sides of both of ourselves is the key out of that, recognizing that it's not shameful to be a man. It's not shameful to be a woman. Nobody's a victim at the end of the day. We are intrinsically have feminine and masculine qualities which can complement which do complement each other. But as long as we go down this whole thing that we are polar opposites, a man and a woman, I think we are causing so much harm. I think it's utterly irresponsible for our youngsters. So we've got to address the idea, why is the shame coming in, preventing us admitting as a bloke? Why are we not admitting that we are struggling like you openly do? And I probably still struggle to admit that, but mentally I've had my serious questions and have gone down the dark side and worked out that there are tools to stop me doing that. And the majority of the tools start with an understanding, self-awareness, what's going on inside the parasympathetic system. Great. Now I actually understand physiologically what's happening. Right. Now where is the tool to help me out with that? But if we don't, we just go down to the doctor like you did and grab a pill. Oh, because I'm a bit of a loser, or I'm just not right. But that's what everyone else is doing. So I'm just going to take a pill like somebody else. And of course that helps stabilize things. But the responsibility is to go out and now I need to learn about my sympathetic system. What's happening? When are the triggers? What are the triggers? Who are the likely people? It's not their fault, but what are they triggering inside me that is taking me down that shameful route? And, we got to 76% of people who kill themselves in this country are men. It's the biggest killer for males up to 45 and the biggest killer for all of us, women included, 16 to 49-year-olds. And it's the biggest accelerating level of suicidality, as Stephen Bartlett talks about in his thingy, of 16 to 24-year-olds. And so we need to stand up. You're in a position of responsibility in your job of a unique industry of safety, physical safety and economics, right? It's so unusual in every other industry. You are making sure that you keep us safe and all the passengers safe on that route. I'm doing the same. We have these constant stresses out there, but I think to admit that we're struggling and take ourselves out of there is again, apart from the listening, is just incredibly important in terms of leadership, because then it gives other people the opportunity to do it. You're in charge of a team there. I'm in charge of a team. We've got to be able to do that and avoid this whole shame thing, which is an absolute killer.
Yeah. Well, there's nothing there that I disagree with. I think one of the key things, and having experienced like loads of shame, there was a time where I was very shameful about what I experienced. And now I think the key thing is kindness, being kind to yourself, loving others and loving yourself. It's crucial in your own understanding. And if you can get beyond the self-flagellation, beating ourselves up, I'm broken, this isn't rational, why am I like this, and move out of that very negative downward spiral thinking. And it's a process. It takes time. I haven't always been able to speak about this. It was at one stage, it was very difficult. I didn't want to admit what was my experience, and to others externally, nothing's going on. And yet inside your whole world is falling apart. So that's, I think, the interesting part of the conversation about masculine and feminine traits. Like I was saying to you before we started recording about, you just Google, the stereotypes of masculine, feminine. So that masculine strength, mountain energy, goal orientated, rational, taking action, problem solving. The feminine side of things, nurturing, being creative, intuitive, vulnerability and emotional. Well, straight away on that list, I see a lot of that inside of me. So, and we are all a blend of all of them. And I think maybe the archetypal and stereotypical images of the past and the recent past of how men should be do get in the way of some guys coming forward to not openly share even, but to seek help, just to seek help. I've just got to pull my socks up here. But the stats, as you've mentioned, speak for themselves. We were talking the other day, and I like an icon of masculinity, I suppose, in someone's eyes, or some eyes, are, if you take like a Navy SEAL or an SAS operator or whatever, right? Warrior class of people. And yet they would do anything for the guys and girls in like the foxhole or the trench next to them, right? Well, that's caring. That's nurturing when they help each other on. So even in that image, there are elements of the feminine that are part of the story. So if it stops people seeking help, I think that is a major problem for society and something that we need to address. Being vulnerable, you don't have to do it all the time. You don't have to sit at work and make maybe you do. I was just thinking of maybe there is a time and place for some people. Some people need to go through the process first before they can speak out. Or the key thing is to just realize that you should go and maybe talk to someone or find help for your experience. And that's where the vulnerability creeps in. I read online about the CAA's plan for, I think it's peer support in the cockpit for pilots, their program. Yeah. And AS has moved towards like more focus on mental health. I think that's excellent, but it's just not in the cockpit. It's everywhere. Check in with your colleagues. We know, like even shifties, you may not spend that much time with a certain amount of people on your team, but you'll know when something isn't quite right, or if they're a bit down or they're just not being themselves. You can take, and not even as a shift lead or a manager, but just as a human being, as a member of the team. Dave doesn't seem right today. I'll just quickly send him a message, just check in, just to see if he's okay. I think was it Norwich Football Club or something that made that video of the two guys sitting in the stand? Immensely powerful. And it's exactly this thing. And you may change someone's day just by genuinely asking how someone is. How are they doing? Quick Teams message, quick phone call. You all right, mate? How's it going? How was your weekend? And just, it's simple, soft skill, just being a human trait. You don't need a life coaching or a psychology degree. Just tap into what being human is all about, how you would want to be treated, and then try and bring that into the workplace. I think that's so key, and it's simple and it's very, very powerful. And then hopefully it will help people open up, seek help when maybe they wouldn't have done before, and maybe break down these barriers. The one thing I like about yoga, is this search for human potential, realizing your human potential. Men, women, however you identify, everyone is an awesome human being. And for me, that's the important starting block. Even when people can't see it themselves, they're struggling, maybe having a bad time, they can't see that they are worthy of people taking an interest in them, are worthy of being heard. So that little check-in, you have no idea. I think we really don't know sometimes how much of an impact it can have.
I think so. At the end of the day, I think long-term chronic depression happens because we are ashamed to admit that there is a problem, and ashamed to stick our hands up and to say, please, can I get some help here? Which is a classic bloke thing. Classic bloke, very masculine quality. I can achieve, I can go out, I can do this. And that served us for a purpose in the old days, because we had to be ultra competitive. We had to be combative because we had to push ourselves physically to the level to go out and oppose the tribe or oppose the weather and build the shelter and things like that. And I mean, and the girls had to do that as well through childbirth and effectively sacrificing themselves in order to allow things to nurture behind them, to keep the children alive and the rest of the tribe alive. So we were pushed to the corners of extremes in the old days, of the polarity. What I really like about the yoga idea is that so much, we talked about it earlier, yoga has been manifested now in Western culture as being, just do some stretches and you'll sort your lumbar problems out and you'll get the neck sorted out and things like that. But the whole idea of it is the Eastern philosophy is it's about energy. It's about creating that much higher level of being I follow a guy called Sadhguru and studied his book Inner Engineering to a massive level. And he talks about the balance of the lunar and the solar, the yin and yang, different cultures, the masculine, feminine. So the feminine is represented by the lunar, by the moon, and the masculine is represented by the sun. So the sun being very aggressive and very out there. We're gonna create life, make things grow, and it's, it can be harsh. The lunar is much softer and creates flow of the waves, etc., and very nurturing and as well. But he points out that in Western culture, we have come up with this idea that the masculine side is very dominant and very combative. It's either winning or losing, understandably, and the female side is all the nurturing. But actually, the feminine side is also represented by a fieriness, a real creative fieriness. And I think if we embrace that, so I think bringing it into our particular roles, great metaphor for life. You talked about the time when you took over a shift from somebody and it was a bit stressful and you ended up offloading your frustration to other people. I've done it plenty of times myself. My children will attest to that plenty of times. I've done it in the work environment. But actually that fieriness is a feminine quality. But then coming back like you did, tell us the story of saying, okay, all right, yeah, wasn't proud of that moment, and I'm going to apologize, is also a feminine quality of admitting mistakes, of admitting that we've gone wrong rather than just trying to find someone else to blame, which I think is the masculine quality. So having the blend, it's not a polar opposite anymore. It's having that understanding is that we are going to get fired up. We are going to be stressed. We're going to bark at other people. But to understand that as long as we come back and are not gripped by the shame of it, understand that the neurosystem, the neurochemicals and the parasympathetic and autonomic nervous systems are kicking in there. What do we do? Right, this is the time I need to demonstrate my feminine qualities. So, I mean, you tell us that story about taking over the shift lead.
I think he pretty much covered it. It was throughout the day, very, very busy shift, and many plates spinning. And it was actually probably mid-afternoon or something. And something hadn't been done. And I addressed it probably not in the best way. I was just very short with one of my colleagues. And it was just the moment it gripped me, frustration of everything we do. It's always the busy days in ops is time critical. And sometimes you can't be at your best. You're tired. You probably haven't had your break. You probably haven't hydrated properly. Lots going on. Mind's whirring. All sorts of things that can fuel into that. And in that moment, I wasn't at my best. And I kind of snapped at one of my colleagues. And then afterwards, I kind of self-reflected and I was like, come on, mate, that's not good. You can't talk to people like that. And just thought, that's not the way to be. But then being kind to yourself, realizing there's all sorts of things that have fueled into that. Don't beat yourself up. You can do it. It's happened. What can you do about it now? And then actually just having a bit of humility, I thought I need to just do what most people would do, but just call them up and make and repair, just repair the situation. Because the problem, if I hadn't have done that, my colleague possibly would have felt shit, would have gone home. I could have wrecked his afternoon. He was doing a great job all day, slight oversight. I could have completely fucked up his day. But then the flip side of that is being open to repair. Where did I go wrong? Okay. You never lose, right? You either win or you learn. We've spoken about this many times.
Yeah,
I really like that saying. And in your own personal development, all right, lesson optimum there. How can I learn from that? What happened? How can I be different in future so I don't make the same mistakes? And then just called him up and then apologized. Did it in a group setting, and repaired. And I just think I wouldn't normally share that because I'm not trying to big myself up. I just think it is a good example, I think, of we're not going to get it right all the time. And in fact, there's another example of one of the skippers I currently work with who the stresses that you guys and girls are in at the other end of the phone we can't really understand unless we've done it. We can try and empathize, and we should, and it's very important to do that. He was in a very similar situation, I think, to me. There was a lot of pressure. It was at the end of a long flight. He was tired, middle of the morning, phoned me up, and then didn't speak to me in a particularly polite way. Let's put it that way. And in fairness to him, 15 minutes later, in fact, it was a bit more than that. Once he got to the hotel, phoned me up. Graham, really sorry. Shouldn't have spoken to you like that. Had all this stuff going on. Lots of pressure. Had to give the boss some answers. When are we flying next? What's the earliest time? Lots of things he was dealing with. There was a problem at the hotel. So lots of factors building into that was driving his response to me. I just happened to be the guy on the other end of the phone. He offloaded, and then he repaired, phoned me up, and credit to him. And, we've got a good working relationship now because he did that. If he hadn't have done that, if I hadn't have done that, it probably would have affected the way my colleague thought about me and how I thought of that skipper, and affecting work relationships going forward. And yet in a very simple, short period of humility and just tapping into being human, repaired, moved on, relationship stronger for the future. So I think that's what I take from those stories. And
yeah, I think
that's
absolutely
it,
bang
really.
on.
I think that's...
Yeah, I think it's absolutely bang on, because we have our individual stresses, not only the moment we're in that job, but for me, 52 years of upbringing and millions of years of society and socialization. And we have such an intrinsic makeup of things that stimulate us for whatever reason. I think it's really, really valuable to not try and pretend that we're not stressed. Yeah, there's the appropriate ways of revealing that. And that's the whole thing about emotional wisdom, development experience, social wisdom, development experience. One of which is just to say, I'm a human being, as you say, I'm a human being. I got a bit stressed there. I offloaded. But if we don't resolve it by just saying, I'm not ashamed of myself. I'm just human and I'm working on that, and apologize it becomes insidiously cancerous, toxic. Everything just crumbles from the inside out. And before you know it, the whole thing has exploded. Chaos reaps and safety is compromised, and enjoyment and money and all the rest of it. So to be able to say, listen, and this is the thing, I think it's very a masculine quality of not being able to admit that we're human, that we're wrong. We always want to be the big heroes, the big chiefs. Of just saying, I've got it wrong. I say this to my children. I warn them. I think I've mentioned it various times in the podcast before. I warn them that I'm topping out for whatever reason it is. I'm tired. I'm got work issues going on. I've got family issues, aging parents who are struggling physically and mentally. I warn them that they're around me, and I'm topped up, and I'm likely to be displaying unattractive qualities, but I will find a point at which I will be able to reset and things will be great, and we'll go out and do some fun stuff together and the rest of it. And I think it's just prepping for that, and just saying, I'm struggling a little bit here, or I'm getting topped out a bit. So excuse me if I'm barking off, or if we do bark off, I'm sorry, because effectively it's either building bridges or building barriers. And the duality of life, the polarity of life, of being right or wrong and ashamed. Shame builds in the rights and the wrongs.
Yeah.
You're wrong. Lack of emotional understanding, lack of understanding of the nervous system. I feel bad. You've caused me to feel bad. It's such a common thing. You've offended me. I hear it all the time. Now you've offended me, safe space, etc. But that doesn't help us move on and develop the wisdom to move on and build the bridges at all, does it really? I think this is the thing. So representing the fact that we're in these intrinsically important roles of affecting people's safety, whether it be psychological or physically, and understanding that we want to make the very best of life and maximize the potential of humanity, is to develop both the understanding, humility of that we're going to bark, feminine, masculine side, whatever. We have an intrinsically important sides that blend in to make this incredible being. And that's the message we need to promote to the people we work with, people we socialize with, our kids. You've got a little young chap. I've got slightly more grown up kids. We've got aging parents. We've got anybody that we affect, everybody we come across. We have a responsibility to do that. And I think you definitely demonstrate that. And I'm learning from you and other people, and we learn from each other at the end of the day.
Thank you. That's really nice to say, but it's true. Yeah. There's always a lesson. We're surrounded by teachers everywhere, aren't we? Wherever it is, this isn't the sort of stuff that is just, oh, that's nice. Yeah, I do that sort of stuff in my private time. It can encapsulate our whole life. There's no reason why we can't bring these concepts into the workplace. And ultimately, whatever your belief system, we're not here for very long in this form, in this incarnation, right? So let's try and make the most of it. And what things can we learn that helps us do better, be better, interact with others better, more harmoniously, help us better in our roles professionally, roles as parents or friends or out in our lives. I think this conversation is quite timely because, like I think you alluded to earlier, in the US, it's just been Mental Health Awareness Month. I think Mind Charity in the UK, for about a week in May, they had a mental health awareness campaign going on. And the environment we work in, we're just about, whether you work for an airline or you're a bizjet operator, we're coming into silly season now. It's starting to get very busy. Pressure is increasing. Those stressful shifts are going to happen. We all know it. We all know it's coming if it's not here already. So trying to bring awareness to this, the fact that we can do something about it, we can be self-reflective, and we can help ourselves. And I think it's ultimately empowering. That's a big thing that I have found, is that in the past, I've sought answers outside of myself. Certainly for the condition that even now it raises its head, but I'm better armed now to deal with it when it does. I'm not completely free of it. Certainly the crippling side of it that I've experienced in the past, for sure. But it's incredibly empowering going out, finding the information yourself, sharing the information, listening to others. I think there's so much out there. Realize that we can do so much for ourselves, go and find it. And then we can move forward in a really healthy way. And we'll be better colleagues to work with, not just how, I think it's interesting how like the stars have aligned to have this chat, because I'm concerned about mental health in general. How can we improve that in the workplace? Certainly in aviation. I mean, I'm quite blessed in a way. Like there's a lot of my colleagues have had these chats with, have had these colleagues with my boss. It's mentioned in safety action groups. So there is change, which is so positive. Certainly in the past, I've been in environments where that would not have been the case. It would have been like, oh yeah, great. Eyes glazing over. Thanks, Graham. Just run along. And so things,
I recognize that too.
Things are changing, right? They're absolutely changing. I think there is still a stigma. We've spoken about this. I do wonder I think there is a stigma around mental health issues, but also it's so personal. Like we said before, like, okay, you break an arm, it's no big deal, no real shame attached to that unless you've done it in a really silly way after a few pints. Mental health stuff, it normally can be the window to your soul. It's difficult to share because it's very personal. It talks to the depths of your being about the things that have affected you, your life experiences. And that's why it's not necessary. It's not necessary for me to talk about the stuff that I've discovered in my own healing. That's not necessary. It's very, very personal. But it's important to talk about it in a certain way because there are tools and things you can do about it. But the stigma maybe it's not stigma. Maybe there's a reluctance, and it's understandable, particularly when these kind of things are so personal. The things that have really bothered me may not bother you. You may not be able to understand. You may be talking to someone that isn't very empathetic, and then you feel silly because you think, oh, I really shouldn't be this way, but I am. So I think there's always going to be an air of, maybe reluctance is a better word, but those that maybe have gone through a process, have found the tools that work for them and hopefully can help others, that's the time to kind of share. And I think it is a responsibility in a way, or for my own experience, I felt that's a better way. I can only talk from my experience. I feel a bit of a responsibility and not irked to do it. The fact that there's a big light at the end of the tunnel when I can see other people struggling. Or when I used to teach yoga, people would come to my classes and like, this is great because you've started your journey, or you're on a journey rather, and you're going to find out information that can really, really help you. Yeah. And so the timing of this, I think, is really great for, hopefully people will be listening. They're coming into a busy time. Oh man, I'm not looking forward to the summer. I'm not looking forward to those shifts. There's things that I can do. And certainly within our industry, hopefully that might help people for the coming months.
Definitely. Absolutely. And we mentioned it his responsibility. Again, Sadhguru, who I follow, he broke the word down for me, which was a real point of enlightenment or empowerment. Was he said that the word is brilliant because it's responsibility, and we have a autonomic nervous system, the defiant flows we talked about, which basically has us react emotionally to something based on our 5 senses, keep us alive effectively, and so we can constantly default to reacting impulsively, but we haven't given ourselves the space to reset. And the responsible thing is being able to respond, is to say, okay, I need to come back here and work out how to reset myself, to be able to think more executively or more sophisticatedly or more sympathetically with the people around. And that's the point. Take ourselves out of that immediate reaction and think, what is my responsible position here to think about other people? And it's just massively, massively beneficial to do that, because then we start to increase our capacity to consider other people, demonstrate some warmth from the heart. One of the things I'm coming up with is work bloody hard, but make sure you keep a soft heart, something like that. I'm trying to formulate it, but because it's very easy to do, again, go back to the masculine thing of work bloody hard, but have a hard heart at the same time. Stop being a big old wussy and crack on with it. And on the other side, the feminine qualities have been perceived as being, being the victim of something more powerful, and having the soft heart, but being the victim, and that having that balance right is really incredibly important. Just going back actually a little bit to the conversation with Professor Scott Galloway and Stephen Bartlett, Professor Galloway talks about the idea of having a society problem when it comes to the things that women are struggling about in society. And that society thing, well, society has made you the victims kind of thing. And for the men, it's an individual thing. You aren't good enough, and you're not acceptable, and it's toxic and all the rest of it. And I think that we're breaking away from this whole idea that we're all part of this same system together. And if I look at the role that you have, going back to our roles, the role that you have as a support team, we are at the front line. So when people see pilots as the ones who are leading the whole thing, but we're not at all. We're just one part of the cog. But we have this kind of horizontal viewpoint sometimes, is that they're the ultimate alpha male. Military, as you talked about, can be represented at they're the ultimate manifestation of where we want to be, and couldn't be more wrong about that in terms of the piloting thing. But I think it can be for your guys, it can be for certainly the junior ones, it can be, well, we've got these pilots at the top there, and when we bark because we're stressed, it's that thinking, well, what have I done wrong? What have I done wrong because I've upset the person higher to me? But that's actually, if we understand emotionally what's going on, we bring ourselves back onto the same plane together, understand that we are just all moving along together. Maybe some are slightly ahead and somebody are slightly higher, but we're all going in that same direction. I think that's massively important. That's the bit of advice I think I would give to your guys, the junior guys, is that we're all blood and guts, and we all puke and poo. At the end of the day, we all come from the same source, from the ground. And I think once we understand that from a horizontal level rather than a vertical level, we break down that, oh, well, they've upset me and I'm taking it personally, or, you're a dickhead and giving it back kind of thing. And I just think, I see your guys are just so intrinsically valuable to us. Is do not underestimate the responsibility that you hold there, and understand that we are struggling human beings in the pilot front as well, and we need to be soothed find way of soothing. So develop your understanding of your emotional feelings and help to soothe us, and we'll try and help soothe you. And I think that's
absolutely
so important.
I think that empathy is the name of the game, and credit where credit's due. From over my career, I've seen it shift. It has changed. There was a time where the way that some people would speak to operations was shocking, absolutely shocking, and it was just part of the culture. And there's probably a lot of people out there nodding their heads going, fucking hell, yeah, I remember that. Yeah, it was horrendous. I can remember being in a company where everyone dreaded the 6 o'clock call from a senior member of the management team. And those will know if there's people from my history. And it was almost a bit like, what do you call it? Like musical chairs, musical telephones, right? It was tick, 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 6 o'clock. Oh, ring, ring, ring. Oh, I'm just going to make the tea. And because it wasn't nice, it would be a barrage of profanity and could be horrible. And you'd leave after working so hard, doing your best for 12 and a half hours, and then leaving that ops room after having been spoken to like that. Shocking, absolutely shocking. But now it's moved forward, and we're not in a blame culture, or certainly not where I work. Let's get to the bottom. Let's ask why those 5 times, find out what's gone wrong. Let's fix it, move forward. Do you need any support? Great. So credit where credit's due. It has changed. The environment has changed, and it is changing. But empathy, awareness of others, awareness of ourselves is key to keep that ball rolling in a positive direction, to keep that change coming. Understanding one another, get to know each other, go to company events, get on familiarization flights, get to know the people that you're dealing with, because it does matter. You spend time with people in a more social environment, then it will be brought back into the workplace. It will increase your productivity, your effectiveness as a team, and you'll just have a nicer time. You realize that actually he, she, not a dickhead, is actually quite a nice person, was just having a rough day, just like I can. And that translates for everything, well-being, and then benefits the company in the way we are, the way we conduct ourselves, the time we spend in our roles. Clients get better service. Everyone wins. It's just a win-win-win situation if we can fuse a bit of empathy in the way we go about our jobs. Different departments, everyone maybe have slightly different focus. The goal's the same, slightly different focus, and it can get in the way of remembering that we are part of one unit. The ultimate goal is the same, but we're only human. Those frustrations arrive. So actually talking to one another and being honest sometimes. Do you know what? I didn't like the way that was. I didn't like the way you spoke there. It's not great, but there's so much division, not to go off on a tangent or get on my little soapbox, but I see a lot of division in society, and sometimes it's not necessary if we could just understand one another. Listen to the other team. There's always a middle ground. There's somewhere where you can meet. You don't always have to agree. You won't always agree. You'll have vehement disagreements and differences of opinion, and that's okay. That's totally okay. But speak, communicate, and you can still respect one another. I've been in some very heated ops meetings with differences of opinions, but that's all right. It's not personal. You're allowed your own opinion. But the key is to talk, to share, and try and understand. And as you mentioned eloquently earlier, listening. Listening is key. Truly listening, not lip service. Right, this issue's going on. What are the guys experiencing? What are the guys and girls experiencing? Let's really try and understand it. I don't agree with them. I can't see where they're coming from, but let's at least try. And then I think everyone benefits. That's a win-win scenario if we can do that. Empathize.
It is. Yeah, it is. And it's that non-judgmental curiosity. I think there was one of the guys talking to Daniel Goleman. I can't remember his old friend, but Daniel Goleman wrote a brilliant book called Emotional Intelligence. He's been around for a long time. He talked about being mindful. It was just the moment-to-moment, non-judgmental assessment of your situation, something along those lines of just stepping outside of ourselves, our emotional reaction to being shouted at by the oppressive boss or leader or the victim who's below or whatever, is just to say, I'm just interested about that. And again, as you talked about, recognizing, my breathing is starting to shallow out a little bit here. That's probably my body preparing itself to fight or fly, run away, because this is it's an unsophisticated response to the situation.
Mm-hmm.
And to stand aside and just say, well, actually, mate, appreciate your trigger here, but there's no lion around, or the lion's behind the cage, pal. It's in a zoo, so it ain't going to hurt you. And that's the sophisticated side coming in. That's the curious side coming in, saying, okay, I'm not going to get caught in the emotional hijack here in this situation. I'm going to observe myself. I know now what cortisol means, what adrenaline means, et cetera, and once we've got that knowledge, experience, articulation, we can start seeing, well, okay, so that person is probably also shallowing the breath out. And I can see their face going a bit pale because it's the sympathetic nervous system shutting down the blood flow to the extremities because it doesn't need it. It needs it going to the heart. It needs it going to the muscles. So that person is under emotional hijack because of their sympathetic nervous system, etc. It's like, oh, great. So what do we do now? It's like, well, whilst they're offloading or that person's offloading, I'm going to take a breath, as you talked about, reset myself, and then speak slowly. I do that when I get a bit nervous. I start to burble and slip my words and lazy with my words like we all do. Ums and ahs all over the place. I'm really learning about this pause. It's not, I'm aware of it. And when I'm talking to you, there have been moments where I paused. It's like normally I'll be going, but I'm really learning how to do that. So it's always these little tools, going back to the whole idea. There are so many tools out there. And to be able to stick a hand up and just say, I'm struggling. Anybody got an idea of a tool? You and I are here for this. This is why we're doing this podcast. It's because we've been through those situations. We're telling the story. It is our responsibility to tell the story because we care about people at the end of the day. We care about ourselves. If you properly care about yourself, then intrinsically you're going to care about somebody else. It's why we've lasted all these millions of years, and finding the tools. And just, there are so many tools out there, and there are people like you and me that can represent it on the male physical side, the classic kind of alpha side, whatever that means, is that I'm very much a feminine individual, but I'm not going to give up my masculinity. And I think that's a really important message. You again represent that.
And it's not required.
Tools are so important.
It's not required. Like on the flip side of the conversation earlier, like those masculine traits in balance are super healthy, super required, and will allow us to flourish. There's absolutely nothing wrong with them. I come from
very focused, goal orientated. Yeah. Let's achieve something.
Absolutely. Like sport competition has been central to my experience as a human being. It's always been there from very early age, and that's something I like doing. And that is healthy. It's really helped me. The rational side of things, the problem solving side of things, the mountain energy, and certainly in becoming a new dad, as something I've reflected on quite a lot, is my role is a support function. The way I see a parenting is extremely inclusive, right? What can I do? What can I prepare? What can I help with? It's not just, dads aren't just babysitters, or they certainly shouldn't be seen as such. There's what can help me turn up, be a better dad, and I think there's so many, I mean, this is another podcast, but the lessons I've learned already in a very short space of time, like it is, oh my God, what a teacher, what a mirror it is to show you flaws and, how you can reflect and be better. But anyway, I think we should just celebrate. If you're very big on like the masculine and feminine thing, and I just think not interested in division. These parts make up all of us, whatever sex we are, and we should celebrate them. And as long as they're in balance in a healthy way, they're amazing. They're amazing tools and will allow us to do incredible things. Because we're just human beings. I'm fascinated by them. Like the potential of humanity really speaks to me. And like, it gives me hope for the future. I see incredible things being done by incredible people, and even more incredible when they didn't think they could do it. And then they realize something that's deep within themselves. It's fascinating.
Isn't that the most uplifting and rewarding feeling when you,
it is,
when you find a way to nurture or encourage somebody to find the very best of themselves. There's nothing more satisfying in life.
Absolutely. And that is true of every single human being walking this planet. Our potential is limitless. And that's why sharing these kind of stories, hopefully sharing tools, there's so much empowerment. It really can lead to a different experience and bring us out of suffering and into some wholeness, healing, and just bloody enjoy life. I don't want to go through being a miserable person. There are times, sleep deprivation. Oh my word, that'll do that. But I want to enjoy my time here, and everyone, these kind of things, these conversations, these tools will hopefully help. And it's unlimited. There's so many things out there that can help people. I mean, Google, we've got so much information now at our fingertips, and yet sometimes we're more lost than we've ever been as a species. So it's being discerning about the information that we take in, who we listen to, what's going to help us. So we do have to be discerning, but it is there are answers to a lot of very, very difficult questions and things that can really help us, simple things that can help us very quickly without cost, and can make a massive difference to our lives.
I think that's a brilliant way. And I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole of talking about parents and the amazing thing but we need to support the male need to support the mums to begin with, and then our role comes in a little bit later, etc. We'll go down that some other time.
No,
but I think that's a brilliant way to kind of conclude up. Really, is that let's just enjoy life. That's the ultimate goal for me. The mission of life, as I talk about with a flight mission, we've got a takeoff point, we've got a landing point. Work out where we want to go, have a bloody good life, enjoy life, make the most of it, make the most of human potential, see the glory and the wonder in other people's eyes when they get lit up, learn how to do it ourselves, find the right people that are going to help us launch on that mission, continue to employ the people to support us en route, like we do, air traffic control. You guys are constantly there, hearing from us, supporting us all the way. It's just such a great metaphor for life. At the end of the day, we've got to bloody enjoy life. And I think that I love that. So, and I enjoy my time with you, usual stuff. I love to, promote people and compliment people, and people might say it's a bit gushing, but I don't care. That's my feminine side. I just think you have such positive energy. Let's find the right people with the right positive energy, and we can learn from them. They're always there to support us. So, brilliant, Graham. Thank you so much, mate. And again, there's going to be more time, plenty more occasions to get you back on and talk about being the dad.
Thanks, mate. Yeah, I like not wanting to just be too much of a love-in, but it's important what you're doing. Thank you very much for giving me the time to speak and to share. I think I really revere what you're doing, not only in your job, but what you've done with your coaching and your podcast. I think it's great. Keep up the good work, mate.
That's brilliant. And that's I'll take that. That's good fuel for my engine. So thank you. Cool. All right, mate. Well, I hope you guys watching have got some good stuff out of there. And of course, you can find me at www.benlefleming, and I'm on YouTube, and I've got a newsletter, etc. So sign up to that. I'm always there to support and love to hear your comments, and whether you're unsure about something or think that we've talked a load of rubbish on a certain level. I think it's really important. I think Graham would agree that too, and he will welcome that feedback too. So thank you, guys. Yeah. And as always, we wish you very much the best, and please remember to keep it in the greens.
Take care, everyone. Thanks, brother.